This segment is going to be discussing in detail something that we refer to as cutoff cues. And for us to understand fully what a cutoff cue is, we have to understand really what is going on behind the scenes with our dogs who are acting reactive. And so what I want you guys to bear in mind is that the vast majority of dogs who display this reactive or aggressive looking behavior are doing so because of underlying insecurity. So it's extremely uncommon that you have a dog who is acting this way simply because they actually want to go out and fight another dog. Often what's occurring, as I described earlier in the course, is that they see the approach of an oncoming dog and they become uncomfortable with it, and what they've learned through repetition is that the way to create more space between themselves and the other animal is to bark, lunge, howl, and do all of those other things that we're of course trying to eliminate. So the goal of their behavior essentially is to get that dog to move away or to get themselves to move away. And so understanding that that's the underlying behavior really helps us to then understand what a cutoff cue is. A cutoff cue is really what the dogs would be doing in a more natural setting if they never got to this point. So if they were living in an off-leash environment, or if we were really, really conscientious from the time they were puppies and were able to stave off some of these issues, cutoff cues are the signals that dogs give with their bodies that communicate to other animals that they're not really interested in a social interaction. So to really illustrate this by way of example, think of any time you've been talking to somebody and they repeatedly keep checking their watch. That's a very human example of a cutoff cue, right? If somebody's looking at their watch repeatedly, you kind of get the vibe that maybe they're not 100% into the conversation that you're having. It could also be that they're yawning a lot or laughing at somebody else's jokes over there, right? So all these little subtle things that we as humans do to stop a social interaction. And those are essentially cutoff cues. So dogs have their own subset of cues that they use, which really help them to communicate to each other when they're not 100% comfortable with a potential interaction or they want that interaction to stop. Most of what we call cutoff cues are going to be some form of the dog engaging with another dog, usually visually, and then suddenly disengaging. And so often what we see initially is just a quick turn of the head away from the other dog. There's various other things that can fall into this category of cutoff cues as well. Often we'll see dogs suddenly start sniffing the ground, and it's usually when you kind of know that there's not really anything interesting there. They'll see a dog coming, and then all of a sudden they'll start sniffing the ground. And of course, it could be a human coming, whatever your dog is uncomfortable about. Sometimes they'll kind of shake off, right? So they'll see an oncoming animal and they'll kind of shake it off really quick, and that's just another sign. You can see sometimes licking of the lips as a stress signal. So there's a variety of these types of things that can be sort of lumped into cutoff cues. But the vast majority of what we're going to be looking for is some form of focused engagement with the oncoming animal, and then sudden disengagement, because a lot of these other things can be lumped into that category, whether it's scratching, shaking, sniffing, or looking away. They're going from engaged to disengaged. And so those are going to be the kinds of things that we look for throughout this segment.